Joe Zekas from YoChicago. I'm here with Phil Berger, who's our erstwhile architecture critic.
My name is Jim Plunkard, and I'm a partner at Hartshorne Plunkard Architecture.
And Paul Alessandro, I'm also a partner at Hartshorne Plunkard.
Okay. And tell me where we are. We're in what's a gorgeous building on the outside, Powerhouse.
We're at the old Union Pacific Power Station at 211 North Clinton that we recently restored and converted and adapted into retail and office use.
And what was it before?
It was it was vacant for, I want to say it was vacant for at least 40 years. And prior to that, it was used as a power station for the Union Pacific Railroad.
40?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
The reason it was vacant for so long was...
No one really, well, it was a challenge.
It was an old coal-fired power station, so it was 4 stories below grade of just open space with an enormous boiler in it. And that's pretty much what it was, just a cavernous 6-story space from 4 stories below to 2 stories above grade.
And no one really knew what to do with this. It's essentially an 11,000 square foot footprint that sits hard on Milwaukee and Clinton and Lake Street, but behind the building, the building extends actually underneath the Metro lines, and all of the Metro line columns come through the building, and so I think everyone walked away. It was a very just dangerous sort of project, and we felt that it was going to be a difficult project to manage unless we had the right team.
So what motivated you to take on a challenge that everybody else walked away from? Why?
Structured development, which is one of the partners is Mike Drew from Structured Development, and he's a good friend. And Mike knew of our expertise rehabbing buildings and adapting them into new uses, and he asked me if I would come and take a look at it. And when he didn't take my advice and said that he wanted to pursue the building, I said, then I'll join you and we'll do the best we can. And we sat down and came up with some parameters of how we would approach a project like this, and then he sort of worked backwards and looked at some of the tax credit issues that you could get for establishing this as a landmark project, and I think that was the genesis for this.
But somebody had to be in love with the building at some point.
Oh yeah.
It's hard not to be in love with the building when you look at it from the outside. It's just a pretty magnificent structure, and even in its derelict stage, it was pretty amazing. Yeah, I think this building has been, been developed around for the past 15 years, and this area has sort of come up around it, and we've all looked at it. And I think everyone has been, there have been numerous people that have taken a run at the building to try to develop it because it just looked like something that could be fantastic. And so some of the early schemes prior to us getting involved, I'd heard everything from a nightclub to a health club to a restaurant complex to an entertainment complex to a single family residence. Everyone looked at it and said, this is just spectacular. And as Paul said, when you walked in at street level, this floor didn't exist. This went down 30 feet. And the ceiling, there were no floors in here. It went up 65 feet. So it was a tremendous space. We like to call it a ship in a bottle. It is essentially 5 stories of building built inside of an enormous shell, and then completely separated from the tracks, which Jim said were structured coming through.
Yeah, that had to be another. So did it involve, just structurally, from a complete layman's point of view, did you essentially have to do excavation and foundations and the whole kind of, yeah.
So one of the big issues here, being adjacent to and actually connected to the Metro lines, is the vibration.
I'm sure that has to be a big issue, yeah.
And the sound, and that to make this a viable space that you could sit in a restaurant and not have your drink shake, we had to do what Paul described as sort of build an isolated steel frame inside this masonry and steel structure.
I think what just went by was the L, actually.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the Metro.
Right. That was the L.
You actually don't hear the Metro from here. You have to be on the other side.
Right.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So do you feel it?
You barely feel it.
We can actually take a little look at that.
I'd love to,
Yeah.
that would be very interesting.
We can go up to structured development, relocated their offices here, and they're up on a floor there, and you can see that, you can see the train go by.
Let me stop and ask a question. You said that you recreated 4 to 6 stories of space, so the basement space is being used, it's been reclaimed?
Yeah, it's garage space.
Okay.
We've developed an area here where we can ramp in and get underneath the building and park. And we can show you all that too. It's pretty interesting. When you look at the facade, when you look at the building, and everyone walks away thinking, what a spectacular redevelopment of an old historic structure. But the work, the detail that had to go into retrofitting this inside the structure, and the size of the building that's behind this facade is immense. This is an 11,000 footprint. There's a 40,000, almost an acre footprint behind this building underneath the railroad tracks.
That's part of this building?
Correct.
And what's there, what did you do with that space?
It's parking.
Oh, that's all parking.
Still parking. If you go back there,
And
you
what's
can
underneath,
see.
what's in the basement?
Part of it is parking, and part of it is just dead space for storage, because we just couldn't continue the ramp down, and there wasn't a requirement for it.
When this was a powerhouse, those were open windows so that anybody could essentially see in.
Correct. It was a Beaux-Arts style building where
Why do you suppose it was built like that? I mean, there was nothing functional about the windows, was there?
No, I think it was just part of the style, because this whole continues all the way down to the old train station.
I think there was a great history. I mean, if you look at the architecture of the Union Pacific Rail line, they had a full-time staff of architects, and we went and investigated in St. Louis all of the documents to try to find what was original, what was added. But you'll find quite a series of beautiful buildings that they built, and I think it was something that just was part of the nature of what was such a
Train station.
train station. Yeah, they're beautiful.
100 years ago were an important architectural thing.
Exactly. And you can see here, what we had to keep was, this was an old spur that actually extends into this building up at this level. And so we had to, we just had to enclose it because it's no longer in use. And we had to, every little detail, we had to coordinate around the metro lines. We weren't allowed to essentially touch their columns. We had to float a structure separate from them. And you can see, you don't see anything. Oh, you see it here. You sort of see it on the other side here, the short side of it.
Trains used to come into the building, get loaded up with coal, or dump coal into the hoppers, and then come out.